What's up, guys? I'm Luke Gaffney, and today I'm going to be talking about a book that I've been reading called The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kashimi and Koga. A disclaimer first, this is not professional advice in any means. I'm 20 years old and still in college, and so I'm just offering my opinions and thoughts on the book. So, to begin with, the book talks about why people can't change. And to give some of the reasons why this is the case, I'm going to give two examples. The first being a personal experience of mine a few days ago, and then the second is an example from the book. So, to the personal experience. The other night, I was in my bed and I wanted to watch a movie. So, I flipped on Netflix and switched over to the movie tab. I began to look through all of the movies they have, the critically acclaimed films, the action movies, the comedies, not the horror movies. Oh, I hate scary movies. And so I was just looking through all of them. And eventually, I looked at the time and I realized 30 minutes had passed when I was trying to choose a movie. So, what does this have anything to do with why people can't change? Well, the very first point I wanna talk about is the fact that a lot of people, myself included, because I'm very very bad at this. But what we do, right, is we want to create the perfect life. And that's fair. A lot of us are perfectionists, even though it's not really the best thing. But a lot of us have that tendency to be perfectionists. And so, what I find myself doing a lot is I try to create the perfect life before taking any action at all. And so, this inaction is a reason why we can't change. So, perfectionism is one reason why people can't change. The second point I want to make about this example is that being young, I'm 20, so I think it's relatively young. I have a lot of potential left in my life. I have hopefully a good amount of time left on this earth, so there's a lot of things I can do. However, when I have to choose a life, when I have to change, I have to take that infinite potential and choose one life. Because since there's only 24 hours in a day, I can't do everything that I want. There's only, like I said, so much time, so I have to choose one. And going from an infinite possibility to one is very scary because once you choose that life, it's hard not to have doubts. It's hard not to wonder, man, did I choose right? Did I choose the right career? Did I choose the right person to go out with? And so doubt is a very powerful emotion that prevents people from changing. The second example is the one that the book gives. And so the author tells the reader to imagine that they're in a car that they've been driving for a while. This car has its own features and bugs that you're used to. For example, maybe as you're driving, it veers to the right some. Obviously, to correct this, you simply just take the steering wheel to the left and you're able to go in a straight line. But when you want to change, you get a new car. And that new car has its own bugs and features that you have to figure out. And in this case, you have no experience doing that. And so you're stuck driving a car that you have no idea what it's really doing, and you have to figure it out as you go. And that's obviously scary. You could get into wrecks or accidents or whatever. And so this is a very good reason why people can't change, is because when you change from your old life and your current life, you know the problems that pop up. You know what situations arise and how to respond accordingly in the right way. However, when you choose a new life, you're going to be presented with new situations and new challenges that you've never faced before. And this in of itself causes a lot of anxiety because as humans, we are scared of the unknown. We want to know what to do when put in certain situations. So change requires us to face the fear of the unknown. And so that's another reason. And then a second point from this example is that when we want to change, we have to say goodbye to some of the parts of our old life. And so we essentially have to let go of part of ourselves. And that's honestly pretty sad because there's some parts of our lives that are really good that we don't want to give up. Yet if we really do want to change, that's what we have to do. So, does the book just leave it at people can't change and that's all? No. So what does it say? It says, in order to change, people must practice courage. And I use practice very deliberately because the book explains that courage is a skill. What that means is courage can be practiced in order to be improved upon. So I think the natural question to ask ourselves is, how do we improve our courage? Well, there's a technique in psychology called exposure therapy that I think does an excellent job at this. So what exposure therapy does is that it has the individual list their biggest fear. And once they have this biggest fear, then they break it down into smaller and smaller, more manageable fears that they believe they can face. For example, a common fear is the fear of snakes, right? So maybe their biggest fear is holding a snake. And so they break it down into examples until they get to the easiest fear. And so maybe in this case, it could be simply going into a room with a snake in a cage. So the person does this, they're still scared because they're scared of snakes. They go in the room and they're like, man, I survived this. And so they move up to the next level. Maybe the next level is they go back inside that room, but this time there's another person holding a snake and they have to inch closer and closer to that snake until they reach maybe like 3 feet. And so the individual continues to progress up their fears until they reach their biggest fear. And in this case, it could be holding the snake. So once the person does this, they're like, wow, I've overcame my fear. And so what actually happens during this is that the fear doesn't go away. That's a common misconception that fear goes away. That's not true. Courage isn't making fear go away. Courage is taking action in spite of fear. And so through exposure therapy, people realize that they themselves are strong enough to face their fears and that they shouldn't let the fear hold them back. And so that brings me back to why I'm making this video in the first place. One of the common fears, or one of the fears that I have, is the fear of what other people think about me. I tend to change how I act when I'm in social settings, and I don't really act to my authentic self. I'm scared that I might cause people to dislike me, and so I don't want to do anything to do that. So I feel like this video for me is kind of my first step in exposure therapy, because although I'm just talking to a camera, the goal is to put this out on like YouTube or something, and I'm still scared of like people making fun of me, like my friends seeing this and they're like, haha, gas, what are you doing? That's scary. And then also just negative comments in general. But I think something that has really helped me, like I feel like I'm a person that feels fear quite a bit, honestly. But it's something that I heard from Tim Ferriss on one of his podcasts, or maybe it was a TED Talk. Regardless, he talks about leveraging your fear, basically. And the way to do this is to look at the cost of inaction and the cost of action. So tying this back to me, if I were to go my entire life without ever challenging my fear of caring what other people think about me, if I were to never challenge that, I were never to make this video, then I would look back in 10 to 20 years, or however long, be filled with regret. Be like, man, I wish I would have challenged that. I could have been so much more successful, such a better version of myself if I would have had the courage to do this. Whereas if I compare that with the cost of action, sure, I might face being made fun of and negative comments and all of that kind of stuff. But that's temporary. And I know that I'm a big boy. I'll be able to handle it. But that doesn't persist the rest of my life like the cost of inaction would. And so I think that's really helped me take action on things that I want to, that I'm still afraid of, but I recognize now that the cost of inaction far outweighs the cost of action. So I think that's a useful tip. So that's my video. This is my first video, so it might not be the best, but I'm gonna work and improve upon the next ones. So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later.